When you think of Five Nights at Freddy's fan games, one of the first ones you probably think of is Five Nights at Candy's. This was one of, if not the first actually good Fnaf fan game, and it got turned into a trilogy. But the newest one, Five Nights at Candy's 4, is stuck in development purgatory, and the most recent release was a remaster of the first game back in 2019. So while I'm in purgatory waiting for new things to release, I'll settle for explaining the Five Nights at Candy's lore. Don't worry, it isn't nearly as confusing as the FNAF lore. We start on October 9th, 1961. A little girl around the age of 6 to 8 years old named Mary Schmidt is going with her father to the local establishment of Rat and Cat Theater every weekday. Each day she plays hide and seek with either the rat or the cat. However, on Friday, October 12th, the place is packed due to the theater having a surprise show. As such, the rat plays hide and seek with a huge group of kids instead of just Mary, and all of Mary's usual hiding spots are taken up by the other kids who refuse to share their hiding spot. Because all of the kids were selfish and refused to share their hiding spots, it sets everything else that happens into motion. Mary decides to hide in the locker in the employees area, and the rat is about to find her, but just before they do, one of the actors named Vinny, who's a puppeteer, shows up and starts complaining that the actor that plays the rat showed up drunk. Vinny tries to forcefully take the costume off the actor, and the actor starts choking Vinny. In response, Vinny shoves the rat and accidentally kills him because he falls backwards and his neck lands on the sharp edge of a table. The cat walks in, sees what happened, and knows it was a simple mistake, and tries to convince Vinny that they need to tell the truth to the police. But, as the cat is calling the police, Vinny chokes and kills the cat, and makes up a story to tell the police. The whole time, Mary was in the locker, and she didn't come out until much later, when the police had already secured and searched the building and locked it down. She leaves, and the police don't even think that she could have seen anything, and instead just have her reunite with her father and leave it at that. Soon, Mary forgets most of these memories, but is still scared, specifically of the characters Rat and Cat, even though she doesn't know exactly why. All she remembers is an incident happening involving these characters. While this is happening, the puppeteer becomes a movie star, and a company called Robotics Corp. Opens a factory on St. Antonio's Road 27, which specializes in making wired animatronics. The owner of Rat and Cat Theater pays for animatronic versions of Rat and Cat to replace the dead actors, and reopens on November 19th, 1962. However, the animatronics are possessed by the dead Rat and Cat actors, although no one knows this. When going to one of the shows with Mary, Mary's brother gets too close to the rat animatronic and gets hurt seriously enough for it to be traumatic, but not seriously enough to prevent a full recovery. This reignites Mary's fear for the Rat and Cat characters, and she starts having nightmares about them. She starts seeing a therapist and starts fighting off her nightmares while she recovers her memories of the incident. She also gets help from the origami cat, which is the last memory she has of her mother, as they made it together before her mother passed away of unknown causes sometime before 1961. Once she recovers her memories, Mary no longer has nightmares about the Rat and Cat, but instead she has nightmares of Vinny, as she fears he might try and get revenge for revealing what he did. However, she fends him off in nightmares, and Vinny eventually either gets tried and executed or decides living is for losers, letting Mary finally live without fear by June 14th, 1963. With the incident that happened during 1961, and it being revealed by Mary in 1962 that one of the actors, in this case Vinny, was responsible for it, it is likely that the Rat and Cat Theater was largely unsuccessful due to the bad PR. And on June 13th, 1964, they decided to rebrand and ordered 2 new animatronics. The first is Blank, an animatronic meant for kids to draw on, and the second is Candy, which was the originally planned name for the cat before the incident canceled the show that was going to reveal the Rat and Cat's names. In order to not have this new animatronic be too similar to the old cat animatronic, it was made blue. While the rat's name has never been revealed, it follows the same naming scheme as Candy's, that being it needs to start with the same letter of the species it is based on, and also follows the naming scheme of Rat and Cat in that it needs to rhyme. The only reasonable name I can think of for the rat is Randy, although that is all just speculation. Maybe the rat's name doesn't follow any rules or naming schemes. We simply don't know. On the night before the new animatronics are ordered, 2 kids go into the factory and are found dead in the factory the next morning, and go on to possess the 2 new animatronics. The company closes down the Rat and Cat Theater, puts the Rat and Cat animatronics in the factory for storage, rebrands itself as CTC Entertainment, and opens up a new restaurant called Candy's Burgers and Fries. The restaurant is largely successful until the Candy animatronic attacks an adult that is mad at their kid in 1987. The animatronic was being led by Shadow Candy, who is apparently the visualization of the spirit of the cat actor. Mary Schmidt, who is now an adult, goes to the Fnaf 2 pizzeria in 1987 and sees the puppet, which reminds her of Vinny. Soon, on September 22nd, 1987, she comes to work as the security guard for the factory, but doesn't report nor is suspected for murdering kids that are put through the factory's machines, which is actually done by Vinny, who is captured on screen by the feed and even on some old recordings, and yet Mary doesn't do anything, probably because she is so over Vinny. For some reason, the Rat and Cat animatronics are working with Vinny, even though Vinny is the one who killed them. It doesn't make any sense, but maybe their memories are foggy, just like Mary's were. Who knows? Anyway, these 4 new dead kids then possess the new animatronics that were built to replace Candy, now known as Old Candy, and Blank. The rat is also sent to the restaurant for some reason, even though the factory was working fine as a storage location. Soon, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closes down due to the bite of 87, which allowed candies to become much more popular as it was the only local alternative. On November 16th, 1987, Mary quits working at the factory and instead works as the night guard at Candy's Burgers and Fries, but gets fired on her 7th night. She comes an 8th night anyway to confront Shadow Candy and then leaves. All of the current iteration of the animatronics are sent to the factory at one time or another in favor of new versions of Candy and Cindy. When the new animatronics come in, the rat kills the night guard, and the new Candy model is blamed, which gets the restaurant finally shut down in 1993 after being open for 29 years. Finally, in August 2007, a 17-year-old girl named Marilyn Schmidt, who is presumably Mary's daughter, loses a bet and has to spend 5 nights in the abandoned factory. After easily surviving because the animatronics are lonely and want to talk to people on the phone after being stuck in an abandoned factory for so long, she comes back for a 6th night, presumably after hearing her mother's tales about candies and the Rat and Cat Theater, and burns the place down, and likely escapes because otherwise she would be reported missing like she is if you lose somehow. This finally ends the Candy legacy after over 30 years. And that's the lore of Five Nights at Candy's, at least until the new game comes out. And while there are a few details that are questionable, it's way better than the Fnaf lore in my opinion, because it's not a complete mess. Anyways, thanks for watching, like and subscribe.